Today we're going to build something we can use in the gym. Yeah, I'm encouraging you to get away from the keyboard, but watch this first. So say we're following some 8-week program or something like that. There are different workouts we're supposed to be doing each day. We want those automatically delivered to our inbox. Let's start by defining some requirements. So we want something where exercises are automatically sent to the inbox. And it would be nice if they were organized and formatted so they're easy to read once we're in the gym. We want to make sure that our workouts are sent with examples in case we don't remember the exact routine or proper form. Workouts should follow some predefined program. It shouldn't just be an amalgamation of exercises. And we want to be able to add and implement new exercises or programs as time goes on. Okay, so let's think about some of the objects and elements we may want to use to design the application. We know we're going to have some sort of object that represents a full workout program. And a program could be, a full suite of a number of exercises that we do over the course of weeks or months that follow some predefined schedule. So this might be like P90X or Insanity or some other program you enjoy, or maybe something you've even designed yourself. So a program is probably comprised of individual workouts. And when I say workout, I mean a day. So maybe it's shoulders and back day or cardio day or something like that. And then each day is made up of, let's say, routines. And a routine might be some chain of multiple exercises that we do as part of a workout. So then we obviously have individual exercises. And an exercise might be run on the treadmill, or it could be a shoulder press or a pull-up or something like that. So I think this is a good representation of the object hierarchy. We have our exercises, where multiple exercises will make up routines. We'll have multiple routines that would make up a workout being one day, and then multiple days of workouts that will make up the program. And again, the program will follow some predefined schedule. Let's go a step deeper here and talk about some of the elements that would make up each of these objects. An exercise is going to have a name, and we know from our requirements that we want an example in case we don't remember how to do the exercise. So let's say we'll include a URL, and this will be a URL to a video or an image or diagram reminding us how to do the exercise. And that's probably it. We don't need anything too complex here. We just want to represent these objects. Then we have a routine, and our routine will also have a name. And I assume we're going to need instructions here. And these are probably instructions on how to do the routine. So in other words, maybe do 3 sets of pull-ups or 3 sets of pull-ups followed by 2 sets of push-ups, something along those lines. And then we need the exercises that make up this routine. And let's say this is an iterable of exercise objects. Then we have our workout, which is made up of routines. So our workout's another simple object here. Let's say it just has a name and an iterable of routines. And then we have our workout program, which for this initial implementation can be really simple. It's essentially just a schedule of days to workouts. So this is probably good enough for us to dive in. I don't think we need anything complex here. There's no complex interfaces or interactions. We can just use these objects and sort of nest them together. So let's go back to our requirements and see what else we're going to need. We see we're going to want to send emails. So to handle this SMTP functionality, let's use Yagmail. It's a stable package, and it means we don't really have to do much in that area. And it's always good to not have to do much. And we'll use Gmail to send our messages. I suggest you create a new account specific to this app. Just keeps things cleaner and a little more secure. You can create an account for free. I've included the link in the comments and on screen here. We do need to do a bit of setup here because we need to allow Yagmail to send emails as us. So head over to your Google account. On the left-hand side, select Security. Scroll down to the Signing into Google section. And if two-step verification is not enabled, you need to enable that. Once that's on, go ahead and select App Passwords. And what we're going to do is create a password so that our Yagmail client can sign in and use Gmail on our behalf. And that way, we're not using our actual password for our account. So under Select App, choose Mail. And then for device, let's choose Other. And let's choose a name for our app. We can call this Globo. And select Generate. And it's going to generate a password for you. Copy this to a place where you won't forget it and keep it secure. Don't share this with anybody because it obviously provides access to your Gmail account. All right, now that the prep work is done, let's go set up our Python environment. So head over to your terminal. We're going to use pipenv to manage our environment. If you don't have it, you can install it from their GitHub page. There's a link there in the comments. So I'm going to create this environment. And our only real requirement that we know of right now is Yagmail. So let's go ahead and get that installed. All right, so now let's head back over to our text editor or IDE, whatever you're using. And we'll start by creating the shell for our main runner file. So I'm going to create a new file and call it runner.py. We're going to need something to pass in our username, our @password, and the recipients that we want this email to go to. So for that, I'm thinking we're going to use argparse. And argparse is a built-in library that allows us to pass in and utilize command line arguments. We'll add the actual arguments later, but for now, let's get the parser going. And I'll add a description for our app here. So let's add this shell. I don't yet know if we're going to need a main function, so we'll start with our standard if name equals main block. And our happy path, or the way we want our program to run, is going to be as follows. So the first thing we want to do is parse the command line arguments and see what we passed in. We know that there might be days where we don't have a workout, unless our workout program is 7 days a week, which good for you. That's nuts. So let's pull in the day. And I'm thinking that we might be able to use the day as a lookup in our workout program module. And then we want to see if today is a workout. And if it is, we want to pull the contents for that workout and send it using Yagmail. So this is a nice shell. For now, we might update this later. This is how we see our program running. And before we move on, I think this get today as weekday integer portion is pretty easy. We can use the datetime library. So let's just add that. And we'll use this somehow in our workout program module to see if today maps to a workout. Cool. If I go back to our design here, we see the exercise is our base element. So let's start there and implement that module. So let's create a new file for our exercise module. I think this is going to be a pretty straightforward implementation. In our design, we only have a name and a URL. So let's just implement that. And the way I think our routine object will use this is to get that name and URL as HTML, because we're going to render our email as HTML. It's not plain text. So let's write a method that retrieves both of these properties and formats it as a nice HTML link. So I think this is good. All it's going to do when we call this is return the name and a hyperlink to the example formatted as an HTML string. So there's one other thing we can do to elevate this very simple object a little bit more, and that's to overwrite the string method, or the dunder string method as it's often called. So if you're not familiar with these types of methods, they're called dunder or double underscore methods. They're commonly used for operator overloading. They're sometimes called magic methods, but they usually perform some action without explicitly being called. There's usually some other behavior that invokes these methods. For example, it's the reason we can add two strings with a plus operator. So this particular implementation, the string method, is typically what's called when we format an object as a string or print an object as a string. So by default, this implementation returns the repr method, which is the representation of our object. So that might be the name of the object and its memory path or something like that if we call it. So we want to overwrite this string method to return our nicely formatted HTML. And we'll see an example of this in action in just a bit when we use our exercise objects in our routine object. I think this is probably going to do it based on our design. This is really all we need. It's a very simple interface. Let's move on to our routines, and we'll see if we need to extend this initial exercise object at all, or if this does it for us. So our routine object is going to have a bit more functionality. We know that it's going to be comprised of multiple exercises, and we might want to choose a subset of those exercises for the actual day's routine. So for example, we might have a routine for traps, and there might be, 100 different trap exercises. We don't want to do 100 on that day, or at least I hope we're not doing 100. So we only want to choose a subset. So I think we're probably going to want to choose some random amount of exercises from within that subset. So let's start defining this. So we know based on our design that it's going to have a name, a set of instructions, and exercises. And I'm going to create a holder variable that will be the exercises for this routine. Because again, we only want a subset of our full list of exercises. So let's define the getExercises method, which will just choose a random one from that set of exercises. And I'm implementing this as a list and getExercises as only choosing one for now, in case we want to extend it later. Maybe there's some program where you're going to want to choose multiple exercises for a particular routine. If we've already done this previously, we just want to return our existing exercises for routine. Otherwise, we want to choose a new exercise. And now let's implement our asHTML method. So again, this is probably over-engineered for now, but it's built to be extensible in case you want to choose multiple exercises for a given routine. I think in our final output, we probably want to say what the routine is. Let's imagine we're seeing this in our email. We probably want to see the routine, then see the instructions, and then a list of the exercises we're going to do. So I think that's probably how we want to see it. Let's define our asHTML method to output that. So we're going to need a sort of bulleted list here. So let's define that. So we'll do this with these list element and unordered list tags. Name of the routine in bold. Then our instructions. And in case we have a trailing period, we'll remove that because we want to use a colon here. And then we'll have our bulleted list of exercises. So I think that's what we want for our HTML, but our exercises need to be in list item tags. And we're building this to be extensible in case you want to add additional exercises for the routine in your getExercises method. So let's create another variable and do a little bit of formatting before we pass it in. So we want these to be list elements, list items, I think it stands for. So we'll iterate through all of our exercises in our exercise for routine, our self.getExercises. So we'll iterate through all of our exercises that we have and format them as bullet items. And again, for this implementation that we're seeing here, this might be a little over-engineered, but I'm doing this so that if you want to expand this a little as we're building it, it will work. So again, we want to define our dunder string method. And let's pause quickly to talk about what's happening here. So because we defined our dunder string method for exercises, when we call exercise and string format it, if I go back to exercise, what's actually going to happen is we're going to be calling this string method, which is going to be calling the asHTML method, which is going to return a perfectly formatted HTML link for that particular exercise. So that's why we define that dunder string method, because it's much cleaner here. When we do our string formatting, it's just automatically going to call that asHTML method for us. We don't have to think about anything additional. And again, we're doing it down here for our routine. And we're doing this so that in our workout object, if we string format, which we will, our routines, it will automatically return this formatted HTML block. So that's just why we're doing that, just to illustrate the power and the benefit of those magic methods. Just something cool to think about and something to take forward in the projects that you are working on now or in the future. Okay, so I'm basing this first program on something that exists. It's called West Side for Skinny Bastards. Yes, it's actually called that. So for this video, I know that they have something called a superset routine. So I'm going to want to implement that. And a superset routine is very similar to an exercise routine, except that instead of randomly choosing from one set of exercises, we're randomly choosing an exercise for multiple sets of exercises. So the behavior is slightly different, and we're going to take advantage of inheritance here to create this superset routine and overwrite just a couple of the methods to generate this new behavior. So I'm going to define this new object. It's going to inherit from exercise routine, meaning it's going to have all of the methods we've just implemented. And I'm going to want to overwrite a couple of these methods to get the behavior we're looking for. So first is the constructor. We have name and instructions, but we have exercise groups, which is a list of lists, which is different than our exercise routine, which is just one list. So to take advantage of the other methods, the other elements in the exercise object, and to future-proof this, I want to call the constructor of the exercise object so that my superset routine will have all of the other properties that exercise routine has. So to do this, I'm going to create a throwaway variable that's not going to be needed, but we'll just pass in one list to the exercise routine object. And we want to combine a list of lists here. So I know itertools has something to do this, so I'm going to import that and use it. So this method, chain from iterable, just combines multiple lists into a single list. And then we're going to call exercise routines constructor. So what this is going to do is pass in the arguments that exercise routine expects to get, namely that unused exercises, which is just a single list of exercise objects, and it's going to run the constructor. So if you add any functionality to this or to the exercise routine constructor in the future, we're ensuring that our superset routine object still maintains that functionality and has a healthy parent-child relationship with exercise routine. For now, all this is going to give us is that exercises for routine variable. But again, if you add things in the future, you'll have those in this object as well. And then we just need exercise groups. So that's it for the constructor. And the only other thing we need to overwrite is the getExercises method. Our asHTML method, we're going to inherit, that can behave as normally, and the dunder string method can behave the same way exercise routine does. So let's just overwrite our getExercises method. So because we initialized our parent object, we have access in this child object to exercises for routine. So we can make use of that in this overwritten method. And the only thing we want to add is just an iteration over exercise group. Again, we just want to append, and we're doing a random choice for the same purposes if you want to extend this in the future. And that'll do it for our routine here. Let's go now a step up and build out the workout module. I'll name this workout.py. If we go back to our design, the workout is also going to be a simple module. It just requires a name and an iterable of routines. So let's implement this. So in our constructor, we just need a name, which is going to be a string, and routines. And routines is an iterable of workout routines. And really the only other thing we need here is the asHTML method. So again, let's format this in case we want to do multiple routines within one workout. And let's remember that a workout represents one day of exercise. And then let's take care of our format string. So for a workout, I think what we'd want to see in the email is something like the name of the workout. Maybe we want to include a warm-up, and then our routines. And because routines is formatted as a bulleted list, it should appear with all of the exercises as a bulleted list. So that looks relatively straightforward, and that's probably all we want here. Again, if you want to make it a little more complex, feel free to. So we just need a new paragraph. Let's add our warm-up message. And I've found a video that is just a quick warm-up. You can put anything here you want. All right, so now we have a quick warm-up message. And then we want the routines. And we just want to return that. And then lastly, let's add our string. All right, so the last thing we need to implement here is the workout program, which is going to be even more straightforward than these other objects we've created. It's just going to be a dictionary. Or at least this initial implementation can just be a dictionary. We can feel free to expand it however we want as we continue to add more features to the application. So let's create a new module. And I've called this workout program. So we want to import our workout. And in our runner, we're checking for today's date as an integer. So let's just create some variables to store our integer days. It'll make defining the schedule a bit easier. All this is going to do is assign the numbers 0 through 6 to each one of these variables to represent each day of the week. So essentially our schedule is going to look something like this, just a mapping of day to the workout for that particular day. So let's add a couple of exercises, routines, and workouts just so we can see this actually built out. So I've gone ahead and added a few exercises to our module that I know are going to appear in my workout. So now let's go over and define some routines that will use these exercises. So let's add our first routine. This will be a press routine. And this will actually be a superset. Let's call this a press superset. And our instructions will tell us exactly what to do for that superset. And then we will have our two exercise groups. All right, so if we go back to our exercise file here, we want to pull some of these in to list them in our exercise group list. So let's do that right now. So to start, we want to import exercise. And if I go to the bottom, let's start listing our press routines. So let's say in this group is floor press and barbell floor press. Fix our formatting a little bit. And in our second group, say it's our flat bench press and our incline bench press. Well, so that's our superset routine. Let's add our other routine here. This will be traps. It's a standard exercise routine. And for our instructions, we just want to perform 3 or 4 sets of 10 reps, let's say. And the exercises are just a single list of exercises this time. So we have shrugs and barbell shrugs. Great. So lastly, let's add a workout. And let's call our workout mid-effort upper. I don't know. I'm just making this up. And we just need to add our routines. So let's actually import that. So this is a list of our 2 routines. So now we got our workout. And finally, let's add this to the program. So for me, this is a Saturday. So I'll make it Saturday, but make sure you make this whatever day you're building this on so that when we test it, it will choose the correct day and actually run. So on Saturday, if today is a Saturday, we're going to pull in that mid-effort upper workout. And now what we can do is go back into our runner, finalize our runner, and start testing this out to see if the application actually works. Let's add a few more command line arguments that we know we need to feed in: the username, the app password, and the recipients. So let's add those. We're going to make each one of type string and each one required. And let's also remember to import our workout program module. And let's just set a constant for the current workout. So this is assuming that we'll eventually be adding other programs to that module. So let's make sure we know which one we actually are checking and using for this run of the application. The first thing we want to do when we run the application here is to parse our arguments. And we can do that with the parser.parseArgs method. This allows us to use dot notation to access the values of each of the arguments: username, app password, and recipients. So we already pulled out the current weekday. So now let's check if today is an actual workout day. So if it's in our list of keys, then we do have a workout today. We then want to get the workout. And we'll set a subject for our email. And then we want to send. So we can set up the Yagmail SMTP client using a context manager so that it automatically manages the open and close methods for us. It's just easier and cleaner to do it this way. So our user is going to be the sender's email. Our password is going to be the app password that we'll pass in. And now let's say we passed in a comma separated list of recipients. We want to iterate over each of those and send this email to each of those recipients. So this looks good. So let's start by just printing our as HTML and make sure it actually looks good. Okay, so let's test this runner out in the command line. And just to make things easier, let's export our app password and paste in the Google Apps password we recorded earlier. So now that we have that exported, it's just going to make it a bit easier to call our function here. So what we want to do, since we've commented everything out, we just have a print statement, is print to an HTML file and open that HTML file in a browser to see if our HTML renders the way that we want it to. Okay, so let's take a look if that rendered the way we wanted it to. Yep, this looks great. So let's remove our comments and actually try to send an email. So there's actually a bit of a bug with Yagmail. I did a bit of reading on GitHub and it looks like we can get around it with a quick fix. So let's send this again and I can show you what it looks like when it comes through in Gmail. Perfect. Very cool. So this works. So we can add a couple of other workout days to our program and run this, let's say, on a cron. And that way, any day that we're supposed to work out, we should get the proper workout for that day in our inbox. So again, the benefit of building this in an extensible way is that you can expand it however you'd like to suit whatever needs you might have. So I've included some thought starters here you can feel free to run with. They're also in the comments below. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please make sure you like it and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions or ideas, leave them in the comments below.